So, hi, Barry. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I wanted I really enjoyed your book. And it's fun that you finally put between the pages of a book so a lot of the stuff that you write about on your blog, Astro Table Talk, because actually it can be quite difficult finding it again. But you've been writing that blog for how long now?
Since 2006. So 17 years, I guess, on and off. I mean, I did a lot of it for 10 years. And then in a way, I used it to find my own thoughts on astrology, find my own way into it. And once I'd done that, it's like I sort of slowed down a bit and I wrote a shamanic blog instead. But I've been writing a few more blogs, astrology blogs lately. I like to do about one a month.
Yeah. And that's the first thing I was going to ask you, actually. It was just how, and what we were talking about just before we started, really, is how you connect shamanism and astrology, if at all, or if you don't connect it.
Well, it's heaven and earth, isn't it? So I mean, I didn't know what the connection was for years, and maybe I'll never quite nail it down. Maybe it's not to be nailed down, but they're two different passions in me. And in a way, the shamanism feels more fundamental, but they're both kind of in my bones, so to speak. Darby Costello said something quite interesting when this African shaman said to her, when she was talking about her astrology, he goes, "Oh, well, your spirits are in the sky." That's a kind of shamanic way of looking at it. So they view these forces of inspiration from which we talk when we do any kind of divinatory art. Well, are they from within me? Are they from outside of me? Or maybe that's all just a story about how it works. But the traditional shamanic way is that the spirits are outside of us and they speak through us. And so in that sense, astrology is the spirit of Mars speaking through you when you're talking about Mars, or the spirit of Mercury. They are there as presences speaking through you. And I think people feel that when you're doing an astrology reading and it's working. It's like you can feel that something's downloading through the astrology. You're paying attention. You can feel the power of it because that something is speaking through them. And that, in a way, that connects very strongly with shamanism in the sense of the spirit speaking through you. But the thing about shamanism is I think the emphasis can be a bit too one-sidedly on, going and meeting your spirit and it talking to you, and that makes you shamanic. I think that's not quite right. I think that shamanism is founded on the experience of belonging to the natural world, which is something we've been forgetting for the last 3,000 years. We experience it now in terms of the mind-body split. That's where I like to begin. And similarly, astrology, by that same token, I haven't really thought about this before, but in that sense, astrology would begin with an experience of belonging to the universe. The more deeply you go into yourself, the more connected you are to the whole universe. You never need to feel lonely because the whole universe loves you. And you can kind of feel that, particularly as a Pisces, which Christina is, you feel that more than anyone. Or you've got the spirits are there, Pluto's there, Mercury there, they're all your kind of friends. So I think that's where it begins, is this experience of belonging. And then through that, there may well at times be these, what feels like spirits talking through you. I mean, I've often had the experience of like Pluto standing behind my shoulder when I'm writing. So that's a bit about how I'd say they connect.
Yeah.
But also, sorry, did you want to say?
No, I was about to go off on a tangent, but
okay, we'll do a tangent in a minute if I don't find another 6 tangents. Is astrology? It can be fix of ascension, that we're going from lower to higher states of consciousness, and the world becomes like the old Christian model, the place of the devil. I think that Pluto came back because he lives under the ground. He came back to take astrology out of this ascensionist model and into something that is here now and embodied. So there can be those two different strains within astrology. And I very much go for the embodiment one, and that we feel the planets through our bodies when we're doing a good reading. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, yeah, I love that, actually. I love the idea of that. And it makes me think also, you know, as above, so below, of Kabbalistic stuff, of having the tree of life inside you and above you. And this is classic Hermeticism in some ways, is that you're feeling the planets through you, which does get lost in astrology, current astrology, which has become very kind of, it's written in the book, you know, and therefore it must be true. Whereas actually it's an embodied experience, isn't it? When you're doing, especially when you're doing a reading, but also when you're writing about astrology. Do you find that when you're writing, also you can feel a planet is there? I think you were saying that Pluto is there sometimes for you when you're writing.
Yeah, I mean, they turn up. I start a blog just with one thought and one sentence. And before I know it, I've got between 500 and 1,000 words. It just sort of tends to unfold. I was going to say something and it's gone. So you better carry on.
Well, I'm going to go off on my tangent now, which is because Pluto came into the story, right? He wants to come in, right? He's here tonight. Yeah. Because Pluto is like, he's changing signs on the 23rd of March. He does his first little into Aquarius. And I know that I think you've got Venus at 1 degree of Aquarius. Is that right?
So have you.
Yeah. So
that's why we get on.
I know that you've got that Venus. I was just thinking, it is that one, isn't it?
Mine's retrograde though.
Oh, well, mine's direct. But it's coming, right? Pluto's coming for the Venus in Aquarius. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are. I mean, every astrologer has been gassing on about Venus in Aquarius, which is going to be coming by the end of 2024. He'll actually be properly in Aquarius. And as someone who, I feel that you're really quite close to Pluto, that you have a good understanding with Pluto. What's your feeling about this about the change of signs? And I was wondering also if you could compare it to the last time that he changed signs, when Pluto went from Sagittarius to Capricorn. You were already in this exploration of astrology, this blog. You were already writing your blog, weren't you? So this is a triple-headed question, many questions in there.
Yes. I mean, I think it's well put to say I have a good understanding with Pluto, not of Pluto. I would never dare say
no.
I've got a good understanding of Pluto, or he'd strike me dead probably. But I do want to be buried with a coin in my mouth, as in being taken across the River Styx to Pluto's realm. So, yeah, Pluto changing signs. I mean, one of the meanings of Pluto's a god of riches. He's the riches that come when you're the other side of the Pluto transit. You get abducted. You go through the wasteland and you come out with some new life in you, some new power to live. Yeah. Pluto is power. He always wants us to give us a new power to live in the transits. And so that is his riches. So he is associated with the economy. And almost to the day when Pluto entered Capricorn back in about 2008 and 9, the stock market crashed. So it was like, okay, yeah. And it was Pluto going from this expansive bubble of Sagittarius to this more contained, grounded sign of Capricorn. And of course, we had the subprime crisis and everything like that, and all sorts of fraud going on. And like Pluto in Capricorn was a huge check on that bubble that had developed. And bringing in some rules. We didn't bring in the rule. We brought in some rules. But not, I mean, there's a whole background to that, but
maybe not as many as we should, because I think Pluto, doesn't like it if you haven't done the job that you're supposed to do while he's been in Capricorn, which is maybe sort out how money works, within the establishment banking.
Yes. So a lot more could have been done, but I mean, I don't know. I don't understand economics. I don't know whether, you know, if you have more rules, well, you get less fraud, but maybe you get less growth as well. I mean, I don't know. But certainly the wild west of the internet began to be tamed under Pluto and Capricorn. We've still got a long way to go, but Capricorn's good on the rules and the regulation and governance, because everything needs governance, or else the psychopaths will take over, you know, more than they should.
But what do you think's what's your feeling about Pluto going into Aquarius then?
Okay, well, let's look at the last time Pluto went into Aquarius, which was 240 years ago odd. That was the time of the French Revolution and the time of the first wave of artificial intelligence in the form of machines, the Industrial Revolution, in other words. Machines that were, in a way, intelligent enough to do our work for us. We're now having a whole new wave of that coming in. I mean, if anyone's read my blog, they've seen me talking about this. So as Pluto did his run-up, has been doing his run-up, so did we get Chat GPT come in. I don't know if anyone's looked at Chat GPT, but you can ask it questions, and it is almost like a human answering it. It gives these bloody good answers. And I think the reason it's caught our imaginations is it is so human. It is almost like the robots becoming human. There's something almost spooky about it, how human it is. And so I think that is a sign of where we're going in AI terms. There are going to be advances such that, well, you know, Turing's test, you know, where if you can't tell the difference, if you interrogate a computer and you can't tell if it's a computer or a human, that's the sort of test of how far advanced the AI is. So we've got a whole wave of that coming, and all the implications of that. I mean, are computers conscious? There's actually sections of university where they study robot ethics, that there's ethical ways of treating artificial intelligence and treating robots. I mean, well, that's really interesting. It raises all sorts of questions. I mean, a guy got fired from Google a year ago for saying that he thought some computer programs, the DeepMind one probably, was sentient. He suggested maybe it is, and that was enough to get him fired, because Google couldn't possibly be associated with that sort of thinking. But, well, I think the onus is on people to prove that anything isn't conscious. Consciousness is just the subjective dimension of matter, which is the objective dimension. They go together. Matter and consciousness, they're the inside and the outside of the same thing. So if they think it's not conscious, well, it's their job to prove it's not. So, yeah. Okay, so it's the second wave of AI. The first lot was after at the Industrial Revolution. Of course, we've got the Luddites, and that is Aquarius as well. That protest, those rebels who are destroying the machines because they were taking people's jobs. Actually, whatever new technology we come up with that takes people's jobs, we seem to generate new jobs that can keep everyone employed sooner or later. It's a short-term problem. So this time, well, maybe there will be. Well, you can't exactly smash computers because another computer will still be running. You're not stopping anything. So I don't know how the Luddites would work, but maybe there will be protests against the increased use of artificial intelligence, the reducing of everything to black and white answers, on yes, no answers on a computer sheet, instead of being able to talk to an actual lawyer. Maybe there'll be something of that.
I also wonder, just as a thought that's just come into my head, which is Pluto and, you know, what happened in the Industrial Revolution is also something changed with how time was used. In other words, the working day came in, and the idea of how, the weekends didn't come until a bit later, but the idea that people were, supposed to go and work in a factory all day, every day, started to come in, and our concept of what was right for human time changed. And I do think that these ideas about time are quite Aquarian, actually, under its rulership from Saturn, in fact. And I wonder if Pluto is coming into Aquarius is again going to change how we divide our time, so to speak.
Well, I mean, Aquarius is both the sort of finest of what it is to be human and humane, and also the coldness and detachment that can come in from the overuse of the cerebral intelligence and its inventiveness. And so, yes, in a way, you're turning people into machines by getting them to work 9 to 5. Yeah. And that, in a way, reached its fullness with the production line. But as a take on this, if you look at somewhere like China and we go, isn't it terrible the way they're getting people working like ants in factories? If you give someone in the countryside the chance to work in a factory or scrabble for a living in the countryside, they'll choose the factory every time. And this is across those worlds. So it's a kind of relative thing, because they've got, for us, they're living a really poor lifestyle, but for them, it's a lot of wealth compared to scrabbling and living in their idyllic countryside. So these things are always kind of complex. But yes, but Aquarius, in the sense of technology, would take us away from a natural experience of time as pure duration and things happening when they happen, which is very Pisces in a way, towards something that is more regulated, and time as something external and machine-like and imposed on us. I guess that's what you're getting at. I hadn't really thought of it.
No, I only just thought of it now too. So, but it's just an idea that maybe time is the way we divide time may be subject to a new change. And I was just thinking, well, also because of what's happened during COVID with people working from, that things have changed. The working day has already changed. And I think that's going to continue. We're going to continue down this sort of changing ideas. But I wanted to come back to this idea of Pluto in Aquarius, as last time it was a time of revolutionary ideas that were actually put into action.
Yes. Yes, it was the French Revolution.
Yeah. And the American
equality,
Revolution.
fraternity. Sorry? Yeah.
And the American Revolution, actually.
And the American Revolution, yes.
During that period.
Oh, now it's interesting because revolutions, if you've got an individual, you can hold two opposites within you and find some kind of resolution over time. That almost is what it is to be human, is to bring these contradictory forces together. But I think it's very difficult for a collective to function in that way. They will tend to swing from one extreme to another, and maybe recreate the same thing. So you've got another tyranny coming out of the French Revolution. With the American Revolution, what's interesting is that it was and you'll correct me as an American,
we'll all correct you. There are many Americans here.
Yeah. Okay. Now, America's got Sun square Saturn in its chart. Now, they proudly had their revolution against the idea of a monarch having power over them, and they gave power to the people, right?
Which is Pluto in Aquarius.
Yes. But what you get instead, if you look at the American presidents, their families become, as it were, royalty. You get Prince Harry goes over there. Everyone gets tremendously excited. So there is this longing in the American psyche for royalty, which is maybe unspoken about. It's secret. And yet, but also this democratic thing. So those two poles are there. And it's almost like they swung from one to the opposite. Mm. Yeah. And
America has moon in Aquarius, of course, as well.
Yes, so there's the opposite. So there's a Sun square Saturn is more monarchical, and Moon in Aquarius is more democratic. And maybe you could argue both of that. And of course, America's just had its Pluto return, its first Pluto return. And Pluto is where we look for survival. And America's got that in Capricorn in the second house. So it's very much around economy and this hard-working ethic. I mean, Americans, I think, work much harder than we do in Europe, and well, they're more economically successful. But maybe there's a survival mentality around that maybe they'll relax around that as a result of the Pluto return. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, well, the Pluto return is it's still ongoing, obviously. And Pluto, what's interesting is that Pluto has such a trouble getting out of Capricorn. It has to keep on trying. It takes so many efforts to get out of Capricorn because there's so many issues that are still to be dealt with. But back to the French Revolution is also interesting Well, both of those revolutions come straight out of the Enlightenment, right? They are Enlightenment ideas. And the American Revolution is life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Those great ideas in the Declaration and then in the Constitution as well. The French Revolution has the Declaration of the Rights of Man. But I'm thinking back again to my idea of redividing time. Of course, they created a whole new calendar and a whole new measurement system, which we still use, the meters and stuff. This comes out of the French Revolution. And a whole way, and not only that, new legal systems, that they created a whole set of new systems. And actually, the Americans had to do that too, with banking, etc. So both of those revolutions are not just the storming of the Bastille, but it's the ideas that come out of them that are transformative, and that actually go on to have impact for, centuries, in fact, the implementation of both of those revolutions. And I find that quite exciting. And we'll see what happens. I mean, but what's your, but this Pluto coming into Aquarius is coming also at a time when we've got Neptune and Saturn at the end of Pisces. What do you make of that Neptune-Saturn combination?
That's going to be in about 2.5 years, isn't it? Saturn and Neptune together in Pisces.
Yeah, but I would consider as soon as Saturn goes into Pisces that they're both in that sign now.
Yes, that's true. I haven't really thought about that combination. I mean, we have got a lot of Saturn, all 4 of them are changing signs. In the next few years, Uranus will change signs, Neptune will change signs, Pluto will change signs. Well, Saturn will change signs twice. But it is like we are entering a new collective era, because all 3 outer planets are going to change sign, and they define the nature of the era we're living in. I mean, how you unpack that, I don't know. It's very complex, but we are entering a new age, which is quite exciting, really. The Pluto will enter Aquarius. It'll first enter Aquarius under a new moon in Aries. It'll just be, the sun and moon will be in Aries. It'll be just past the new moon. And if you look at the chart for America, if you're looking economically, well, then, in a way, New York is the financial capital of the world. So set it for that. And you get the new moon in Aries in the 12th house. So it is like a new dream for humanity, economically, at any rate. And maybe that has a lot to do with AI and Silicon Valley and all of that, because that is Silicon Valley is this remarkable powerhouse this remarkable creative powerhouse that so much is coming out of at the moment.
Do you have a chart? Do you have a chart that you use for Silicon Valley?
No,
I don't either. No. We should come up with one, because it would be interesting. Whether you use the chart for what's his name, Leland Stanford, or something like that, whether you'd start it that far back, or whether you'd start it with the first, the first computer being built there, because it is a remarkable hub or center, a navel, isn't it, of ideas?
Yes. I mean, America was like that. We'd like, say, Chicago 100 years ago. It was this remarkably vibrant industrial place. And now that's kind of moved to China, but America's moved on, and it's more on the sort of information services front that it's
And of course, that's the thing about Aquarius is this is about the information network. That's what Aquarius is a giant network, a giant web, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious
revolutionized.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious meaning of Pluto and Aquarius, which would be in there for a good 20 years, is, the internet is ripe for this huge empowerment, in all sorts of ways. I mean, it's going to be, they reckon it's going to be taking all sorts of jobs,
I think it's going to be creating a lot of jobs. I mean, there's a negative side to this, isn't there? And a positive side to how this could be interpreted. So I just got a comment from Isabel, which is interesting. In my time 20 years ago, when I worked in Silly Valley, we considered the US government spinning off IBM to be the birth of the industry, but Hewlett-Packard to be the founding of the Silicon Valley hub. Okay. So we'll look at that. Actually, I'll put up a chart for that at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's great, actually. So it would be the Hewlett-Packard chart, I guess. Yeah. Where were we going with that? The internet.
Yeah. And also, well, it's the move from Capricorn to Aquarius, because consecutive signs, it's interesting to look at how one sign grows out of another, because it's easy to overlook that, because it's much more interesting to look at the squares or the trines or the oppositions. And we just think, well, they're inconjunct or quincunx or whatever. They don't talk to each other, but they do grow out of each other. And Capricorn, you learn the rules, you master the rules, you build a solid foundation. And then Aquarius, you earn the right to reinvent the tradition because you've mastered it. I don't know how that would apply to Pluto moving Capricorn to Aquarius, but maybe it has been, this building of the online industrial base, if you like, over the last 15 years. Yeah. And that sets the scene, the stage for a whole load of invention as Pluto enters Aquarius. Maybe it'll be something like that. I mean, one thing astrology teaches you is how difficult it is to predict the future.
Yeah.
How unpredictable it is. It really opens you up to the mystery of the future. It shows you the shapes in the mist, yeah, of the way it's going, but the specifics of it, you're just wrong,
Let's go back to your book. Okay. So we've talked a bit about Pluto and Aquarius. And in your book, you talk quite a lot about yourself and your own, and the transits to your own chart, which actually I found really useful and powerful, that you're happy to discuss what it was like to have a Pluto transit or a Saturn transit. And I just wondered if, looking back at your own transits from Saturn and Pluto, if you wanted to talk about some of that. That's I can't remember which chapter it's in, but you've had, you discuss it at various points. It was in the 90s, some of this, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was in a way, my initiation into astrology was through the outer planet transits. That's how I learnt it. It was through living through Pluto square my sun in my mid-30s. That taught me more about astrology than any number of books could have done. Actually, I've only read 2 or 3 astrology books in my life. I've learnt it more through sort of going to the odd seminar, talking about it and doing readings and writing about it. But it was living it on my pulses and just finding myself unable, as Pluto squared my sun, to carry on as I had done before. So it's like he removed the life force that I'd taken for granted. He showed me that I wasn't in charge of my life. I couldn't just use my will to run my life. It was a Pluto say so, whether or not I had the energy to do anything. So that was, that was taking that youthful hubris away from me, where you think you can do anything. And actually, no, you can't. You can only do anything at the say so of these deeper forces, this deeper matrix, this deeper pattern that your life is really about. You're the servant of that. And the Pluto square sun transit was getting me to start listening more. Instead of having ideas about how I want to live, instead of trying to gain enlightenment by being a Buddhist, and trying to get the rest of my being to conform to these Buddhist ideas, I went from that to shamanism, which is more about listening to the spirit within me. And astrology is the same, about listening to those spirits within me. So that was Pluto square sun was a turning point for me in terms of listening. And I think that's often the case with these outer planet transits, is that there's something new for us to listen to, something that we've maybe overlooked, and we thought, well, I can get away with ignoring that bit of my life because actually it's really inconvenient for the rest of my life. And then you find it comes in and bites you because actually there's something really important in it that's going to change your whole life. So I think a lot of my work as an astrologer is people will come to me under these outer planet transits and I'm going, no, it's all right, you're not going nuts. It's actually in some ways, it's quite a useful thing, all these things that are disappearing out of your life, because there's something new trying to be born. So I help them make sense of what can be a very confusing time, because people often want to put things back as they were. And they go, well, how long will the transit last? I go, 2 years. Good. And it's almost like they'll write it down. If I can just hang on for 2 years, then I can put everything back as it was before. And it's like, no, you're missing the whole point here. Is you need to let yourself be demolished. Let the new life that is Pluto push through you, or let that ensoulment that is Neptune wash through you. Or those initiations, those creative bolts of lightning that are Uranus upset your life, show you, light up the whole landscape in a new way. Just be open to all those things. And they often take courage, because, the people around you have got used to you being a particular way. They maybe even need you to be in a particular way, just for their own sense of reality. So if you've ever watched American Beauty, where the lead actor, actually, he steps out of the American dream and takes a job at McDonald's and starts smoking weed and starts doing what he wants. And his wife has an affair with someone else, and she's still in the American dream, and they all think he's gone nuts. But when you look at it from his point of view, you can see that actually it's the rest of them that have gone nuts. And he's the one that's just being true to himself. So it can take quite a lot of courage to lead these transits, live through these transits and unfold them, because you may have to upset how other people want you to be and what they're used to you being. So it's a crisis. Yeah.
It's a crisis. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's also an astrologer last night, and she was talking about her Saturn squares, basically, and saying that every time she had this sort of square of the sun, square to the moon, she knew that she should leave her husband, and she didn't. And it got worse all the time. And then she finally did, but it took her, 21 years, I think. Three big, is that 3/4? Yeah, that's 3/4 of the Saturn cycle to do it. And then I was thinking, you've had 2 Saturn returns now, haven't you?
Yes.
So how would you describe the difference between the first Saturn return and the second Saturn return? And what would you have any advice for people about dealing with Saturn? Because you're also an Aquarian, which is helpful for Saturn, is ruled by Saturn.
Yeah. I mean, as an Aquarian, you sometimes need to make your peace with convention, and not just rebel against it, and find that actually you don't lose your magic when you do that. Well, Saturn is a planet of incarnation. It's about bringing spirit into matter. And that is always difficult. Spirit doesn't necessarily understand matter or want to be there. And I mean, the crucifix is a great example, great image, a bit horrendous, but it really makes the point about how difficult and painful it is. You can feel like pinned to the cross of matter. And in a way, that's more Capricorn. Capricorn learns to be at ease with that. And the joy, the sense of satisfaction, of richness, of undergoing that difficult journey. So the first Saturn return it's about learning to incarnate for the first time. It's like it's time to show up on the planet. Maybe you've spent your 20s doing a bit of this, a bit of that, exploring different sides of yourself. But you get to 29, 30, and you see it like clockwork. And I'm sure you've all seen this. People, they undertake some new major responsibility. They get promoted. They start some new career. They get married. They have their first kid, something like that. Or sometimes they might duck out of conventional life. It's like, right, I'm going to do this esoteric thing. But it's something that is about a major responsibility for themselves. They're taking it a new way. So that's the first Saturn return. And that's difficult because Saturn is about qualities such as discipline, patience, responsibility, mastering something. They're not something that comes naturally to young people often. So that's why Saturn's difficult at that age. We don't want to learn those things. So second Saturn return is we spent 30 years doing that. We spent 30 years. This is schematic, showing up, arriving on the planet. Yeah. It's become second nature. We know how to do Saturn now. We know how to apply ourselves to things. So the second Saturn return, I'd say, is about, okay, you can stop pretending to be a responsible adult now, and you can plan. Yeah. You've earned the right to just play because you can do life. You've shown up, which is what your first task was. Now step back from all that a bit and just play and have fun. And actually that gives the outer planets more room to work through you because you're not getting in the way with your own ideas about your life. Yeah. You're just letting them do stuff. And you could find that your most important achievement comes after you're 60. And that's because you're not trying to achieve anything anymore. It's almost incidental. It comes out of your play because play is a deep thing. It's when we're being whole, we're being natural, we're really at ease with ourselves when we're playing. So I think the second Saturn return, that's my kind of advice on that, is chill out and play and trust and trust these things that want to work through you.
I'm interested also thinking about what you just said about Saturn and the cross and this, the image of Christ on the cross is the image of spirit pinned to matter, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're coming into this Saturn in Pisces, which is very much that conjunction, the meeting of spirit and matter of this, Saturn in Pisces is Christ on the cross.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So what would you say to that, aside from yes? But
enthusiastic, yes. I don't know. I mean, I think we had a Saturn-Neptune opposition, was it, during the Iraq War? And it was like America getting bogged down and swamped. They'd invaded this country and suddenly they were bogged down in this counterinsurgency, and it seemed like there was nothing they could do. That's what happens when Saturn doesn't listen to Neptune. Saturn likes to be boss, and he likes to boss around the outer planets, and he particularly likes to boss around Neptune, I think. And it never works. So Saturn needs to learn to serve the outer planets and serve Neptune, and particularly with Saturn Neptune, he needs to learn to become, if you like, the walls of the monk's cell, the guardian of spirit, the provider of conditions for spirit, instead of trying to tell spirit to do a 40-hour week and get a proper job, and measure him accordingly. I mean, this is Saturn chutzpah. This is Saturn hubris to tell spirit to try and boss it around like that. And of course, that's the way the world works. But that's not how we're trying to work if we're listening to these outer planets. So Saturn and Neptune at its worst is Saturn trying to trample over spirit and all sorts of terrible illnesses and disasters happening and swamps. But at its best, it's like creativity. It's best. It's like a classical music or something. Yeah. Something from this Mozart or something, this angelic music being channeled through this disciplined craft. That's the two at their best.
Yes, I agree with. I think that's a really, really good metaphor. It's Bach, it's that disciplined, beautiful structure that you can get from Saturn. And Neptune, structure to hang on. I mean, the negative side of Saturn and Pisces last time, I remember it clearly, was Rwanda and Yugoslavia. Those were very negative aspects of Saturn and Pisces.
Yeah. The last time Saturn was in Pisces, I looked this up earlier, it was also when Bill Clinton was having his affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, God. And lying about it, right?
Well, he would, because they wanted to have him for it. I mean, for heaven's sakes, what the leaders of Russia and China must have been thinking while the leader of the West was being done for having an affair with an intern. Why is that important? So it is like Saturn in Pisces, and another person who had got Saturn in Pisces was our previous Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, right? So you've got to be dangerous. You've got to be careful once you start talking politics because it's a minefield. But Saturn can find it very hard to function in Pisces because Saturn is about discipline and Pisces is about the opposite. And what his downfall was is he couldn't do the day-to-day. Yeah. He didn't pay proper attention to detail. He would let parties happen that shouldn't happen. He would let people be in government who shouldn't be there because he didn't have the conscientious. It's not like he had anything to gain by not doing these things, but he just didn't do them. He didn't have the diligence. Yeah. He had the ability to. He could get the popular vote. Saturn in Pisces works well when it has a collective working through it. So he could get the collective vote okay, but not do the day-to-day. And that's why he had to go in the end. Because I've noticed you've got Saturn in Pisces, Christina. So you do well. Your life works well in terms of form and structure when you're doing things for other people. But you maybe find it hard to get your personal life structured in that sort of way. Would that be true?
Yeah, my personal life is very steady, weirdly enough, but it took me a long time to get there. I had to get past the first Saturn return.
Yeah.
I haven't been spoken about in the same breath as Boris Johnson before, ever. I'm not sure how I feel about that.
No. I wasn't meaning to compare you. Saturn in Pisces was also, it was like 94 to 96. And in England, that's when we had the Major government. And poor old John Major couldn't get anything done because, decent sort of chap, but he didn't have enough of a majority and he had half his party against him. So he was kind of floundering. And that's another kind of sad, because you see Saturn on a mundane level describes the type of government that we have. So, the last Saturn in Pisces, John Major couldn't get anything done. Bill Clinton was setting everything up so that he would come undone.
Yeah.
Because Pisces can be a sort of self-undoing place. So we've just come out of Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius could be quite ideological. We had Liz Truss for a brief period, and her undoing was ideology, implemented clumsily, without taking people into account. And that's very Aquarian to do that. And of course, we had Donald Trump at the end of Saturn in Aquarius. He wasn't exactly ideological, but he was certainly out of the box. He was certainly he was certainly unconventional, however you want to judge that. So in a way, they were both Saturn in Aquarius. So what Saturn in Pisces is going to bring, I don't know. Maybe we'll go into some sort of governmental meltdown in some way or another.
Well, one thing that Saturn in Pisces definitely brings in is a dissolution of boundaries somewhere around, and that's back to Rwanda and the dissolution of Yugoslavia, and actually Eastern Europe the Berlin Wall came down in '89, but the actual resolving of Eastern Europe was really very much those mid-90s years when Czechoslovakia became the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and there was this dissolving of boundaries, some of which was good, and some of which was not so good. And
one of the big ones was Russia. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, and Russia is a big one. Was Russia, and we're still having issues with that, aren't we?
Well, we had Boris Yeltsin, who was an alcoholic, in charge of Russia, and it was just doing disastrously. And in the end, strongman Putin comes on, at the end of the 90s, and takes his place.
Well, and also the dissolution of all that Russian, all the wealth of the people was then distributed to, whatever three oligarchs or whoever ended up. There were no rules, and that's also a Saturn and Pisces thing. Is suddenly there are no rules. And one thing that I would say about this Saturn transit into Pisces, as you say, you always want to look at what's come before. With Saturn's strong in Aquarius, it's happy in Aquarius, and then it comes into Pisces, and Pisces is like weirdo land. Not only that, but it's Pisces with Neptune in it. So we're in super Pisces, Pisces times anyway, because of we've had 10 years of this Neptune in Pisces, and that I would say that the Neptune in Pisces is partly this like fake news and all of that. So Saturn is coming into this world, which is dominated. I think he's kind of dominated by that Neptune in Pisces this time round. Yes.
Who knows? It's going to be some sort of messes somewhere or other, isn't there? In government, you
Yeah.
know, but maybe necessarily. I mean, maybe things do need to dissolve for a while. I mean, out of Saturn in Pisces comes Saturn in Aries. When Saturn went into Aries, Tony Blair took charge, for better or for worse, but there was definitely someone in charge.
Yeah. And also all of those Eastern European countries, all of that did need to sort of dissolve and be organized. And it was a good thing that happened in the end. And actually, for the most part, aside from Yugoslavia, for the most part, it was peaceful. And, you know, things kind of worked out. So there's always an up and a down, isn't there? There's always, we can't really know which is going to happen necessarily. You have to look at the whole context.
Yeah. And whether something's good or not depends on where you're looking at it from.
Exactly. Like Russia's another example. Is like we were thinking, great, Ukraine, you know, is no longer part of Russia, and Russia's thinking, it's terrible that we no longer have Ukraine. So, you know, both sides, one side loses and the other side wins sometimes.
Yeah, you can see it from Russia's point of view, and how America would feel if Russia was sending in troops to Mexico. Not happy at all, you know. So, or sending in weapons to Mexico, which is, you know, what we're doing with Ukraine. So, what was I going to say? Yes, the EU, the angles of the EU are right at the end of the mutable signs.
Which chart are you using for the EU?
The EEC from 1958, I think it is, when it first started functioning. Right, you've got the Treaty of Rome, which is the earlier chart, which was the aspiration to create a union. And then when it actually started happening, the EEC, I think it's 1958, and it's got like, I think Virgo rising, end of Virgo. It's got the moon in the 8th house in Taurus, which shows that it is an economic union, shared economy of, if you read the moon as the member states. So it works really well like that. And but it's got these mutable angles that Neptune's going to be crossing and Saturn's going to be coming up to join in a couple of years in Pisces. So it's going to be really interesting what happens to the EU in the next couple of years through this Neptune-Saturn in Pisces.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I have that chart, but I have several charts for the EU. I haven't got that one handy. Yeah, I haven't looked at the EU chart for a long time.
I've been watching this one coming for years. It's like there's some kind of unraveling and reshaping. I mean, maybe it's, you know, the UK leaving was probably a big shock. And it's like, well, you know, what happened there? And there's maybe some, you know, and their ex-presidents are saying, well, it's, I mean, I don't know if you remember the days of Jacques Delors in the 70s. It's like it was full steam ahead, you know, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And it's kind of lost that mojo, and it needs a new vision.
Well, and I think the loss of Angela Merkel is huge still.
Yeah.
She's, you know, she was like the still center of the European Union. The whole thing.
Well, in a way, Germany is, you know, whoever's leading Germany is in a way at the center of it. So yes, there's some new vision.
Yeah.
And who knows what that is, you know. Maybe it'll just, I mean, I remember Nick Campion saying 20 years ago, predicting that the EU would unravel.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I mean, I think that one of the things that's happened, well, anyway, this is what we're going too political with that, but I would say that Brexit's been a bit of a warning about how badly things can go.
Yes.
And I think that's been a big a Uranian wake-up call, Uranus and Taurus, you know, this is what can happen.
Yeah.
And I would be kind of surprised if it just unraveled. I don't think that's likely.
I don't think it's likely either. I mean, there's too much economic interest at stake.
Exactly. What the money, they've seen what happens to the money if you start pulling the whole thing apart, and it's actually disastrous. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions? I mean, feel free to ask personal, like if you want to ask anything about personal outer planet transits, because that's something that Barry is actually really good at, or anything like that. Meanwhile, we'll just carry on if no one wants to sort of raise their hand. Anne, can I unmute you?
Yes. Yes. Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Hi there. So for personal, so I have a Libra rising, and I've had with a 19-degree ascendant of Libra and 22 at the bottom of my chart, Capricorn. So Pluto going through my fourth house has been really challengingly difficult, displaced home. And now it's moving into Aquarius in my fourth house before it goes into my fifth house. So, I mean, I have a Cancer sun. 7 degrees Cancer. And I'm just wondering if Pluto is going to get easier and if Saturn in Pisces is going to help me out at all here on the home front with stability and creativity. Is that too complicated?
No. I mean, that was, if your IC is at 22 Capricorn, I mean, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction was exactly on it at the beginning of COVID. So that was like a nuclear bomb going off, wasn't it?
Exactly.
At the foundation of who you are.
Surgery and a move after 30 years. Major foot surgery and a move. It was incredible. Worst period.
Yeah. And has the move been, has there been a good outcome of that?
Yes, the move has, but the circumstances supporting it are unresolved.
Right.
So,
would it have happened?
My life, the quality of my life is much better.
Would you have done that move willingly, or did Pluto have to come and force it on you?
You're absolutely right. I didn't do it willingly. I thought I was very happy where I was, and I was forced out. And this is such a better situation. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, that's often the way of it with these transits, is that we don't recognize the need for something new, but something bigger than us does. Yeah. And that's often what the resistance to transits is people want to carry on as it was. And but if you look back and you listen, I can guarantee that there would have been niggles, there would have been a yearning for something different going on in you. Is that true?
I think so. I think I was pretty stuck, and that this is that the life that I'm living in terms of my abode, my physical circumstances, is much easier and much better energy all around. It's yes, that's good. But I'm wondering in terms of creativity, because I write, and and things have not moved forward at all in writing, although the feedback has been good. So as Pluto moves it from my fourth house, where I've dealt with home, personal circumstances, and physical circumstances, what about my creativity? Will Pluto moving into the fifth and Saturn now in the fifth, right? Both because they share that house for the time in my chart. I mean, is creativity, will that move forward, or am I stuck with Pluto in Aquarius?
I just want to jump back one step, because your rising sign was at 17 Libra, isn't it? So
I think it's 19 Libra.
19 Libra. So that Saturn-Pluto conjunction, you were already in it. You already had Pluto squaring your ascendant. So in the last 5 years or so, I'd say your whole life has changed, because Pluto has hard aspected all the angles. The angles are our 4 main points of connection to the Earth. They are where we incarnate. They're the main house cusps, because the houses bring the chart down from being just a planetary drama to something on this Earth. So your whole life changed, and that's never easy. And it can take a long time for the new to be really ready to unfold. I mean, what's your progressed chart look like? You haven't had a progressed new moon or something, have you? Or don't you know?
I don't know. I think I couldn't put my fingers on it. I may have,
Okay. Where's your moon?
My moon is Aries.
How many degrees?
So I've got a grand, what do they call it? Cross T square. I have moon at 9 degrees Aries. My sun is at 7 degrees Cancer, and my Neptune is at 10 degrees Libra. And the Neptune is sitting just above my ascendant in the 12th house at 19 degrees Libra.
So it's opposite your natal moon and square your natal sun. Neptune. So Neptune's very, I mean, you've got this extremely cardinal chart. You know, sun, angles, and moon are all cardinal. I mean, that's quite unusual. You're a very particular type of person, and you have to be moving forward all the time. You have to be taking charge all the time of your life and doing something. And it's very difficult for you to go through these periods where you just have to stop, yeah, and allow these deeper changes to happen. That's difficult for you. And it's like, I don't know who I am anymore.
Exactly right. That's exactly what I've been going through, especially the last 8 weeks. It's like I have no idea. My whole life I had direction and ambition out the window. What do? I don't know where to go.
But this is the Neptune in your chart. This is you learning about Neptune because he's opposite your sun and square your moon, or the other way around. He's fundamental. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he's opposite your moon, square your sun. Neptune is fundamental. Neptune only knows who he is when he is no one, if you see what I mean. When you're just a hollow bone, when you're just a channel. So you're getting an initiation into being no one. And when you can be no one, Neptune can speak through you. But as long as you're this ultra cardinal person who always has to be in charge, there's only a limited amount you can achieve because you can't fully listen to Neptune. So these periods where we can't do much productive in the long term, and you need to take more of this attitude in the long term. You don't have a problem taking charge. You don't have a problem making things happen. You've been doing it all your life. But not doing, that's what's difficult for you. And that's what you're kind of learning, I'd say, at the moment. So when you talk about your creativity, it's like, is this coming out of a need to know who you are by doing something? Yeah. To what degree is it that? And to what degree is it actually there is this creative impulse that wants to do something? Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. I've been creating my whole life. And I've been saying to myself and friends, I guess I'm waiting for a sign from the universe. Do I pursue what I've pursued my whole life? Or is there a new direction? I don't know. Is that appropriate to take non-action?
Well, what does it for you? What idea excites you?
Writing something that will inform others and writing something that others recognize as being meaningful and impact their lives and because of course it comes from mine with all those cardinal.
And do you have something specific you want to write about?
So I've written a play that I've tried to get out there on, as it turns out, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from 2014, which just keeps reemerging, and the idea that art can solve the problems of the world. I mean, this is why I love following Christina, because arts are such an integral part.
So where's your Mercury?
So my Mercury...
Can I interrupt, guys? Yeah. Because they've got 2 other people with questions.
All right. Sorry. Okay. So, keep writing. Just keep writing.
Can I also just say one thing, which is Saturn has by Sun been in your 5th for 2 years. So you might never have, that's a creative block. And it is about to move into Pisces. So see what happens after the 7th. It may be an uncorking. Sabrina, can I unmute you? Or can you unmute yourself? Thank you, Anne, for that question. That was actually really profound, what happened just then.
And thank you. I feel that way too. I have to thank Barry so much for the feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, what Anne's talking, I was just part of it. I started doing the artist way, which is to unblock. And Saturn is has moved from my 5th house. But I remember Christina was the one that pointed that out years ago, that book. So we've been doing that to unblock, to be able to play. Now, of course, many questions. One would be, with Pluto coming into Aquarius, for us that have a lot of air in our charts, I'm wondering how that will play in our lives. I have like 7 planets in air signs. Sun is in Pisces, Jupiter is in Pisces, but a bunch of other people are all in the 3 air signs. So
have you got anything have you got anything in early Aquarius?
My Venus is at 5, almost 6 degrees.
Yeah. Okay. So Pluto's coming up to that. And what's your rising sign?
Late degrees of Virgo.
Right. So Venus rules your 2nd and 9th houses. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. And it's in the 5th house.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same. I've got Venus in early Aquarius in the 5th, ruling my 2nd and 9th.
Have you had any fun lately? I haven't had that much fun lately.
Well, I tell you what happened to me. Pluto conjunct Venus. I had a dream that was an initiation the other night. I was officiating at a wedding, and I was due to put the ring on the woman. I think went away to come back, and I noticed that I had my walking boots on, and they were covered in dirt, and that I couldn't perform this ceremony with dirty boots. So I got in the bath and started washing my boots, and I got too much water on them. And then when I went back, the ceremony had carried on anyway. Yeah. So it was saying to me, look, there is this marriage in heaven happening. Yeah. It's happening anyway, whether or not you try and participate. But meanwhile, you're having this sort of water of spirit on your feet, which is Pisces. So outer planet transits, I think, always are initiations into something new. I was being initiated in that dream. I'll tell you in 5 years' time what that dream was about. Yeah, it's like that. Dreams aren't to be, if you've got a lot of air, you want to go and find the meaning of a dream. Yeah, but okay, fair dues. But actually, we just need to sit with them and let the dream live. And maybe we'll never have a meaning, but at the same time, that dream becomes a long-term part of who we are.
Yeah.
So initiation. Because people sometimes complain that our, indigenous early peoples, they all had initiations. We don't. We haven't got that. But actually,
we have lost that.
I think life initiates us if we're open to it. We don't need the ceremonies if we're really open to what's happening. And this is what I'm always saying with these transits, is just be really open to whatever's happening, and you will be guided through this transformational process. So you've got Pluto coming up to your Venus in the next few years. You'll particularly start to feel it once he enters Aquarius. It'll be a long run in. So it's about love. It's about being able to love in a way that you've never loved before. Being able to love without losing yourself. That's the power of that's the power Pluto will give you. Maybe you do lose yourself because you've got Sun conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. I don't know. Is it in the 7th?
No, they're not conjunct, but yeah. I do have conjunction of the moon in Libra with Pluto in the early degrees.
Oh, wow.
I suspect that you're saying is actually I will be able to allow myself to not be fearful of losing myself.
Well, yes, with Pluto conjunct Moon in Libra, you will lose yourself in relationship. There can be a disempowerment when you're younger, but that's exactly where you learn. It's almost like you need to go through that disempowering process. And maybe you're ready now to kind of love in a wholer kind of way, where it becomes an augmentation of who you are instead of a loss of something, and treating the other person as the other person no longer becomes a completion. Yeah, because you're complete in yourself. And so you can love in a different kind of way. And that's maybe the runway that you're heading down over the next few years. And it'll come towards you. Yeah. So there's, but also, Venus rules your 9th. So it's also about teaching and learning and publishing and what you have to give back to the world, because your Venus rules that 9th. And Pluto will therefore be an empowerment of your ideas, because it's in Aquarius and ruling your 9th, through Venus. You might have certain powerful ideas come to you that you want to communicate to the world in some way or another. Who knows?
That was great, Barry. This is really wonderful. I got Teresa as well now. Teresa, are you there?
The light is down. It's evening in New York City. First of all, lovely. Welcome. I have a 2-degree Aquarius sun. So I'm always with Christina from the first time. I didn't know what it was, but I was drawn to that and her Pisces moon, because my moon is 29 degrees Aquarius. So that connection, it also drew me to my husband, who has a 2-degree Pisces moon and an Aquarius rising. So I have a stellium. Christina knows my chart. She's been very kind to me, and we connect. I don't know, and happy belated. So at any rate, being a fellow Aquarius, when I went through my second Saturn return, you have to remember I have a Sagittarius rising, and in that rising is my Saturn and Mars conjunct at 21 degrees. I have a 0-degree Pluto Virgo MC. My nodes are 4 degrees Scorpio, which I have a 2-degree Scorpio Neptune and a 4-degree Neptune Jupiter. So these are all
you're 3 weeks older than me.
Okay, there we go. Happy birthday. It's always good. I'm an elder. I'm ready for it. I'm passing Cougar. I'm going straight to Panther. So at any rate, a Sag rising, you gotta laugh or else you're gonna cry. So what happened with me with my second Saturn return, it literally came in, and I'd gone through a series of I'm a cancer survivor. When Pluto went into my first house, I went through a series of 14 separate surgeries. Now you got to remember the whole time. Where's Neptune?
I'm not catching all of this. If you could speak a bit more slowly.
Oh, sorry. I'm New York. Now Neptune is up here, okay, and it's squaring my rising. And during that time period, as it came in and out of my 12th and into my first, as Pluto crossed in there, we discovered that I had lobular carcinoma in situ. And we took 7 years of medicine, no problem. It was almost like waiting. It went through. I saw it hit my son, who was a Sagittarius. I became sober my first return. I had a child on my first return. It was a very budget. I moved to New York City on my first return. I watched myself reincarnate over and over and over until I became what I really wanted to be. What I thought at that time I wanted to be. And it was very successful. But all of a sudden the cancer hit. Boom, boom, boom. And with each surgery, I went through a series of 13. And in the very last one, as that square was creating in my first, my Saturn return, we have a Virgo in midheaven, Pluto. We have Neptune over here that's been affecting me for how many years and going along very well because, hey, it's pretty comfortable with my Scorpio placements. I said, okay, we can work with you. You know what I mean? I can deal with it. I learned more than I've ever learned in astrology and asteroids for Christina, things that I hadn't delved into. I've been studying astrology since I was 12. It just made sense. And I'm getting ready. I have a 12-degree retrograde Venus. I have a 15 Aquarius Chiron retrograde, and I have a 29-degree Aquarius moon. Now, then once again, my north node is Scorpio, south node Taurus. So there's that health.
How many degrees is your rising sign?
I have to dig it out. It's very early Sagittarius because I don't even get to 27 degrees, 21.
And so it's early Virgo as well, your midheaven.
It's 0 degrees. Pluto is my MC with Pluto in Virgo.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've got Pluto in Virgo, but you've got that North Node in Scorpio. And I mean, the evolutionary astrologers, they start off with the North Node. They treat that as the most important bit of the chart. And fair dues, why not? There's all sorts of ways of doing it. But I mean, in some senses, the North Node, it's the point where we grow the most and we're challenged the most. So in that sense, it is the most important part of the chart. And we've both got it at about 4 degrees Scorpio, and we've got a nodal half return as I speak. Yeah, the North Node is at about 5 Taurus. We've both got a nodal half return in the next few days, probably.
Well, and then mine's reverse. I have, you know what I mean?
It's a nodal half return. Yeah, the North Node will be at 5 Taurus, and your North Node's at 5 Scorpio. So it's a half return. It's an opposition. Yeah. So and the thing about having North Node in Scorpio is it's a water sign, right? Now, from the sound of it, I don't think you've got any water in your chart, have you? Personal water. You've got Jupiter, Neptune, which are kind of moving towards the transpersonal, but it's difficult for you. You don't necessarily know what you're feeling personally very quickly. Yeah, it can take you a few days to catch up just because of the way you're built. But it's a difficult one because you're here to learn the lessons of Scorpio, as an Aquarian, and for Scorpio, life is a series of deaths and rebirths. Yeah, with no remainder. Yeah.
My entire life from my parents. We were moved at least every 1 to 2. The longest we spent in one place was 3 years. When I hit 18, they moved 3 more times. I said, I'm out of here. I'm off this bus, okay? You've moved me every 2 years of my life. Yeah. So
well, that would have been difficult for you because your sun and your moon are both fixed. So you do like things to remain relatively stable. But it was maybe a good training for you for the deeper kind of deaths and rebirths, which can only happen a few times in life. Yeah, because they take a lot of absorbing. But that is the nature of Scorpio, and to learn to pay attention to what your guts are telling you, to what your instincts are telling you. And of course, as an Aquarius, we like all these sexy ideas, that are about the future, and they're really interesting and they're really unconventional. And we love all of that. But we need to listen to our bodies and listen to our instincts. I mean, I had to get ill for several years in my mid-30s, but to get me to start to listen to my instincts. Yeah. Because Aquarius is the only human sign, I think. It's the only one that's got a human being in it, i.e. it's not an animal, and we need to learn that animal.
But so, my question is about what I'm really looking at is that square, that Piscean, how affected, because I've watched what Neptune has done.
Which square are you talking about?
Well, I'm looking at the Pluto, my MC Pluto, the square with the Neptune, with the square to back to my rising again. Because, my rising is really who I am. I was an athlete. And I would break this and I would get this stitched up because I would go find tribe. I was moved so quickly.
So Pluto is square your ascendant as well as conjunct your MC.
Yeah.
That resonates well with your Scorpio North Node because Pluto rules Scorpio. So that need to die and be reborn and to surrender to that kind of process is big in you. And it will probably traumatize you and pull you apart at times. But there's this dark God, who needs to live through you. You need to let the dark God live through you. And it's not easy and it's not polite and it's not civilized, but it's very real. It's very raw. And that's when you feel that your life is really being lived. And because you're sun and moon in Aquarius, you're able to be unconventional. You're able to be that raw, uncivilized, real person and not even notice the funny looks people are giving you.
But there's another question, and we've been going for quite a while. But I think maybe you guys should talk to each other some more because it's really interesting that you have the same chart essentially. I've got another question from Lou, who is she says she's asking, what do you think about Saturn in Leo, just as a sort of placement? Barry, I don't know if you have anything to say to that.
Robert Plant has got Sun conjunct Saturn in Leo.
Well, there you go.
I mean, he was a major rock star, age 19. He was like Saturn in its precocious, which is, he was talented and successful Saturn when he was very young, which is Leo. So that's one meaning of it.
Yeah. And I would also just say, as a kind of current transits, this guy, it's her son who has it, has actually had a Saturn opposition for, while Saturn's been in Aquarius. So he's like halfway round. So it's one, I'm trying to work out how old he would be, but he's had that difficult phase, frankly. Saturn in Leos has a difficult phase when Saturn is in Aquarius.
Yes. So Saturn opposite Saturn.
Yeah.
I mean, where's his son?
I don't know. It's Lou. I don't know if you want to say anything more about this, Lou. He's 15, Aries sun.
Yeah. Aries sun. Oh, right. So it's fire. Yeah. I mean, Saturn there's always something to learn in Saturn. I mean, I've got Saturn in Sagittarius, which is a sign of religion. And I had to go through the whole organized religion thing through Buddhism and then learn to find my own guidance from within. So that spirit thing was very important. So for Saturn in Leo, there's something about, and Saturn is where we manifest, where we find form in our life. So as a Leo, with Saturn in Leo, you need to find form in your life through being your natural self and not following other people's rules, of who you should be. And he's 15 years old. Well, that's perfect for that sort of rebellious. He's going to be. Is he quite rebellious?
She's got her mic isn't working, so she can't reply to that. But I think that maybe, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Saturn goes around not quite like a clock, but there's that 15-year-old rebellion thing, and it's because of the Saturn to Saturn opposition.
Yes.
So that's why we're all kind of rebellious around that age, really, is because we're getting that Saturn opposition. And then, now he's leading up to, believe it or not, he's leading up to that 28-year-old Saturn return.
Yeah.
He's now on the curve to that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be particularly rebellious if it's on the Leo Aquarius axis. And there is a strong, the Aquarius Leo axis is the group and the individual, and the claims of each. And you're going through that intensively when you're a teenager, because you become a herd animal, don't you? You're very identified with your group of friends. You become very conformist around them and rebellious in relation to your parents and what's come before. And particularly as a sort of feisty Aries, that's going to be quite strong. But what he's working out with that opposition is the relative claims of who he is as an individual versus the claims of the group.
And the claims of the group may have been pretty strong with that Saturn going through Aquarius.
Yes. Well, sometimes the claims of the group are good. They socialize us. They civilize us. So we kind of need both. Finding ourselves as an individual and then finding out, well, how do I bring that in relationship to the collective? Difficult thing to find. Yeah. We need to separate ourselves off in order to just find who we are.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. Claims of the group have left him very withdrawn and alone. That's what Lou's saying. Okay, I think that's the Saturn opposition as well. Is that for with any Leo planets, they're very expressive, and having that opposition can leave you isolated sometimes.
Is withdrawn and alone. I don't know. Maybe he's quite happy. Boys can be like that. They're just happy with their video games. I don't know. Does he view it as a problem?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? It may be that he needs to have that alone time. I definitely think things are going to change when Saturn moves into Pisces, which is is it tomorrow? I mean, it's going to.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting, for Lou to observe that, because basically there's this pressure that he's been having, and now it's come off. And at the same time, with the sun in Aries, he's got that Jupiter expanding his ego. He's got a lot to express, and he may be just feeling isolated. He may be withdrawing from that group as a way of self-preserving. So she's saying he probably is happy in the thing.
PlayStation.
Him being PS4, to him being freer. That he may need to have done that for a while. Sometimes we need to do that thing of losing ourselves in that other world to escape this one, and then we come back out again. I wanted to say that what you were saying to Teresa that just then was really profound about this struggle of of Scorpio and having to be reborn. And also, so there was that aspect to it. And I also wanted to reiterate the point that you're making also is that Pluto will be squaring the nodes, won't it? So anybody,
yes.
I don't know if you were making that point, but I was busy thinking that. And this is a really important for anybody who's got nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, basically. You're going to be having that square, which can be as powerful when it's an outer planet. It's a really powerful transit. So that's coming up for both you and Teresa. Do you have any thoughts on that, actually, the Pluto squaring the nodes?
I hadn't thought about it because I was just thinking about Pluto. Yeah, it'd be squaring my node as the nodal half return happens as well. Pluto squaring nodes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. I've never paid that much attention to transits to nodes, but I mean, nodal transits, they're often about, or nodal person or event that moves your life on in some way. They might just be around there temporarily, but it's something that helps your life move on to a place where you can continue to unfold and grow. But Pluto square a Scorpio North Node, I mean, there may well be a need to just die, because Pluto rules that Scorpio as well. So, I mean, it won't be exact for about 3 years, but I may well need to die, literally or metaphorically. I mean, the thing about Scorpio is it might be literal. I mean, death isn't a big deal if you're Scorpio. I had a dream about death about a year ago in which there was just so much death happening that from the point of view of death, it was completely normal and everyday and almost banal. They didn't even notice it because it's such a regular occurrence. It's just normal, just what happens. And it's happening by the thousand every second. So a Scorpio is at ease with this. And, death is an opportunity to learn in a new way. I'm sure it is, because everything is an opportunity to learn in a new way. So maybe I'll literally die. I don't know. I've got no reason to suppose it, but that is part of Scorpio, as Pluto squares my North Node. Because there is there is no such thing as death. This is just a temporary dream that we're in within this much vaster something, this much vaster mystery of spirit.
Which house is your North Node in?
Third. That's my writing.
Yeah, I would say, I would connect it to the house, really, that it's in. That wherever the North Node is in, that maybe something will have to die and be reborn in there. Or maybe you're just going to write a really big book about Pluto.
Well, I'm writing a fantasy trilogy at the moment.
Okay, well, maybe you're going to write a really big hey, wait, that's an incredibly good prediction. Astrology prediction.
Yeah. Where Philip Pullman left off. Because Philip Pullman completes Lucifer's rebellion against God and has Lucifer win, and he ditches God. And I'm going, well, that's just going from one extreme to another. It's just another opposition. You need God and Lucifer to shake hands. So that's my theme, using shapeshifters as the instrument of this reconciliation.
I'm looking forward to reading that, Barry. And I guess that's unless anybody has any more burning questions. Are you raising your hand to say yes? Or are you just lowering your hand? Okay.
Okay, super quick. Because Lou, probably her son is 6 months older than my son. My son is Libra. He's 15. And he has Saturn early Virgo conjunct the South Node. So he will have the Saturn opposition in Pisces conjunct his North Node.
Who is this you're talking about?
My son.
Okay, yeah.
My 15, yeah. Just like Lou's kid. Just different axis.
He's got Virgo Pisces. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an axis, I'd say, of chaos and order, and finding the balance between them. The claim of Pisces, which is just to surrender and allow events to unfold, and the claim of Virgo, which is to be analytical and to be together and to plan. That kind of tension.
Yes.
Which, you know, as a teenager, well, you can see that tension there as well. He has his schoolwork to do, which is Virgo, but he probably wants to dream as well, which is his spare time and his time in front of the computer. Because I dream when I'm in front of the computer. I might be playing stupid games, but it's allowing another level of me to dream when I do that.
But it's interesting because the Virgo part is taking hold, and I feel that the Pisces, the surrender, the relaxation, that needs to happen too. I feel that there's some, you know, extreme worries or that kind of thing. So
yeah. What's his sun sign?
Libra, just the opposite of Lou's sun.
Right, and his moon?
Leo, 18
Leo. So he's kind of moving from Leo to Libra, because your moon governs your childhood. And so he's moving from the moon to the sun as he gets older.
Yeah.
And you know, as a Libra, he's maybe too much of a people pleaser sometimes, maybe.
There's some of that, yeah. But it's, at the same time, he's finding the things that he likes.
Yeah.
But I think there's a tension and nervousness because of the Virgo rising, of course. So I guess the opportunity, I'm just pondering if that opposition from Pisces is allowing him to see that other side.
So has he got Virgo rising and Saturn in Virgo?
Yep, on the 12th.
Does Saturn conjoin the ascendant?
No, but the South Node. I mean, the Saturn conjoins the South Node.
Right. So yes, with Saturn in Virgo in the 12th, there is a resistance to just like dreaming and letting go, isn't there? He doesn't trust the unconscious. Yeah.
It's very analytical.
Yeah. And but that may come eventually. But it's an older kind of thing, learning to form a relationship with the unconscious. That's a deeper, much older thing. And for now, he may well be, you know, a bit analytical, a bit of a muggle in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
my son's a muggle. I know about them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were telling me earlier that your son's a bit of a muggle at the moment. I know Lou's son is similar. Anyway, I'm going to end now, but I want to end by just saying about your book, which I've now put, here it is, this book, right? It's been really great to have you here, Barry. Thank you so much. And if you want to help Barry after this great session, which was actually very deep, it's amazing how deep you can go on a group thing like this, actually, when everybody's thinking hard. And if you want to help Barry, get the book and write a review on Amazon, because that would be really useful, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. That's my kind of long-term shop front, because those reviews will remain there like forever. So that's how it will remain a seller for years to come.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody.